Hello and welcome to all Israel News viewers. I'm correspondent Tal Heinrich, right now talking to you from Tel Aviv. Usually I'm based in New York, and today I'm joined by Joel Rosenberg, editor-in-chief of All Israel News, best-selling author, and also the anchor, the host of the Rosenberg Report on TBN. Hi, Joel. So Title
Hey,
42
good to see you. Title
expires
42.
today. That's the Trump era policy, the Trump era order that allowed for swift deportation of illegal immigrants at the U.S. southern border, which means that the federal government is now expecting waves of immigrants arriving at the border, attempting to enter the U.S. I can tell you that about 2 weeks ago, authorities reported about 7,000 arrests per day. And they're expecting this number to increase to 10,000. Now, the Biden administration also sent last week 1,500 more troops to the U.S. southern border on top of 2,000 that are already there. And what strikes me is that, the White House hasn't really acknowledged that there is a crisis up until now. And then there was a press conference, and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked by Peter Doocy from Fox News, well, if there's no crisis and everything is really under control, then how come you're sending more troops to the border? What do you think about what's going on?
Look, well, where do we start, Tal? It's so bad.
Start with the word crisis.
Okay,
let's begin there.
So obviously it's a crisis. Everybody in America knows there's a crisis, unless you're the most far left wing, like not even a normal liberal, but just super progressive. Everybody knows this is a crisis. I would not use the word crisis. In my column today, I'm just filing now for All Israel News. I'm calling it's an invasion, because over the last just since President Biden took office, okay, January 20th, 2021, just in the 2.5 years, 5.7 million people have illegally crossed into the country. Now, several million of those were apprehended and are being processed, but then there's the gotaways, which are several million people who just got into the country, weren't captured, or were released quickly, and we have no idea who they are. Now, in the United States Constitution, this is important. In the U.S. Constitution, Section 4, Article 4, it says that the President of the United States, the executive branch, the government, shall protect the states and the people from invasion. Now, I don't know how you don't call 5-6 million people streaming into your country without having any idea who they are. How is that not an invasion?
So here's my next question to you. You have
just one thing about you, but you said the 1,500 troops. So that would look like, if you just look at that headline, oh, Biden's starting to get it. But actually, as I point out in the column, number one, the 1,500 aren't actually going to the border to protect anybody. As Texas Governor Abbott said on Fox News Sunday this week, they're just coming to do paperwork to process the bazillions of people that are coming. That's number one. Number two, Biden admitted in the press conference yesterday that it's gonna be chaotic for a while.
It wasn't chaotic up until now. But
yeah. And third, one more. The third thing he said is we're doing all that we can. Now that is just a flat out lie. He stopped building the wall. He dismantled the Remain in Mexico policy that the Trump-Pence team had put in place. And I list in the article several other things, but he's not doing everything he can. And this is a dereliction of his constitutional duty. And frankly, it's just insane because it risks not just the economic issues, the social dislocation on the border and elsewhere. It risks terrorists coming into the United States to do irreparable harm, which is the premise of my new political thriller, The Libyan Diversion. But it might not be fiction. It could come to pass.
Yeah, that was actually my next question to you. What are you most worried about? I mean, you have economic implications, you have security implications, and you also have political implications of, such mass migration of people. And you're not supposed to talk about the political implications of unless you want to be called a white supremacist in the country. But Joel, you said the president is not doing his job on immigration. On top of that, you have the vice president. That was supposed to be one of her missions, Kamala Harris. You have Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who's been questioned also about these aspects by, Congress committees, also not doing his job. Some Republicans, have called to oust him, actually, that he should leave his post because it's clearly not doing his job. Now, one of the things that really jumps out to me, Joel, is how some Democrat lawmakers, but also governors and mayors, are not really blaming the federal government for them. They are blaming people like Greg Abbott, like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, for sending immigrants their way. I'm talking about, cities like Chicago, mayors of Washington, New York, Philadelphia, that have been complaining about this method. But at the same time, I mean, you want it to be sanctuary cities, right? You get what you wish for.
Yeah, look, well, okay, so you got a lot in there because this is a huge issue, and the interesting thing is we haven't really been covering this at All Israel News for a while. The reason I decided to change that is because of the terrorism angle. Yes, there is the sanctuary city angle in the United States where places like in California and in Chicago and Martha's Vineyard and elsewhere say, oh, we've got no problem. You come here and we won't even turn you in if you're illegal. The problem is multiple. There's issues of Americans having their jobs being replaced by people that aren't American citizens, but also the exploitation of those non-American citizens because you can cheat them. The employers can basically pay them almost nothing. And what are they going to say? And that because they're not documented and they don't want to be caught. Then you've got the issue of human trafficking, where vulnerable women and children, little girls, are being trafficked into sex slavery and stuff. And then you got the sort of the human slavery on the work issue. There are so many issues that are bad.
And you didn't even say the word fentanyl yet.
Well, that's right. Fentanyl. No, exactly. In my column yesterday, I talked about fentanyl is 50 times more deadly than heroin. 50 times more, and it's coming in record numbers across the U.S.-Mexican border. But the reason I wanted to start writing about it on All Israel News, because people think, well, what you're a little far afield, Joel. It's because of the terrorism angle. So last year, Tal, according to official U.S. CBP, Customs and Border Patrol statistics, Homeland Security statistics, last year, 98 people that are on the U.S. terror watch list were apprehended on the U.S.-Mexican border. 98. 100% of everybody that we caught on the terror watch list was trying to come through Mexico.
And let me guess, not with a Mexican passport.
No, exactly. Now, so the good news is those 98 were caught. That is good news. But when you've got 5.5 million people streaming into the country, the question is, how many did the U.S. not catch? Now, this year alone, and we're not even halfway through the year of 2023, right? And already 82 people on the terror watch list have been apprehended on the Mexican border, which is telling you that there's a surge, at least a doubling, and could be more later, of people. That's just the people that are being caught. So the question is, look, it only took 19 radical Islamist Middle Eastern terrorists to get into the United States on 9/11 and create the worst terror attack in all of American history. And in my novel, in the fiction of the Libyan version, I write the central premise of the novel is, what if the U.S. gets distracted and an American president is not focused on that border, is focused on other issues, and terrorists not only sneak whole cells of terrorists into the country, but also nuclear weapons as well, or other types of weapons. Now, again, I'm writing fiction. Right, this was Mike Pompeo's suggestion to me. He wasn't saying go write about this. I asked him, "What's the thing you fear most?" Because you asked me. Well, the thing I asked him in September of 21, at the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I was interviewing him at the Museum of the Bible for the release of my book, Enemies and Allies, the nonfiction book. And we covered a lot of ground: Israel relations, Abraham Accord, Iran threat, Russia, China, the biggies. But then I asked him, Mr. Former CIA director, Mr. Former Secretary of State, what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about that we haven't talked about? And he said flat out, ungoverned spaces on the U.S.-Mexican border. In other words, the Mexican government has basically surrendered the northern territory along the U.S. border to drug cartels, sex traffickers, organized crime syndicates, and other bad actors. And the risk is, he didn't say terrorists. That was scary enough what he said. But as I thought about it more, I realized if I was a radical Islamist jihad leader, I'd be sending people, lots of people, through that Mexican border, because you can't get on a plane anymore and come into America if you're a terrorist. You can't get on a boat. You can't come in by truck or car. But that Mexican border is so open, and Biden's doing nothing about it. If something horrible happens, some terrorist attack or series of attacks, and after 9/11, people thought, well, how could we have known? But no one will be able to say that if it happens, this year, or God forbid. But I pray it doesn't. I pray the Libyan diversion is just fiction. But this is what worries me, and this is why I think we have to start tracking this connection between terrorism in our part of the world and the risk of terrorism inside the United States because of the border crisis.
True, and we will continue to cover this topic on All Israel News. Joel, when's the new thriller being released?
Well, we're a nonprofit, so I'm not trying to promote it, but it does come out next week. And I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, but the point is, there's a news value here, which is that All Israel News is covering this topic now because there is a connection that we're not hearing in the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. We're not even hearing it much yet in the conservative media about the national security implications of the border crisis. Mostly it's a social, economic, legal, political discussion, and understandably, but I'm trying to inject into the discussion the national security side. And
we will have many more discussions online of this kind. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tal Henrik for Joel Rosenberg, All Israel News. Thank you for following us.